may I say, it's an honor being here. I'm not quite used to all this wiring. Ladies and gentlemen, leadership. My experiences in leadership are quite varied. My views on leadership might be a bit different. I draw from my experiences in cricket, mobilizing the people to build a cancer hospital, and of course, politics. So it'd be a bit different to perhaps what you heard this morning when I was stuck in the airport. It's probably what you've heard about leadership is from the corporate sector. But I'll try and draw from my experiences. And I feel that there are four main points of leadership which propel an individual above the rest and which make him successful. I don't think that the most talented, the most gifted, the most educated become good leaders. The most important thing for leadership is a vision. It's the people who think big, who have a bigger vision, who are idealistic, who believe in their dreams. Those are the ones who, in my opinion, reach the pinnacle of any field. I don't think I was, particularly talented compared to some of the talented players I played with. I saw during my 21 years of cricketing career. I also don't think, I was exceptional in study. I was at average, above average at times. When I was the butt of all the jokes in the team. And when I approached the coaches, because I was selected to play for a county team in England. So when I approached the coach there, I said, look, my ambition is to become a fast bowler. So he looked at my bowling action and said, look, you can be a good medium pace bowler, but your bowling action is such that there's not any chance of you becoming a fast bowler. But my ambition, this is what I want to say, that my vision was never to be a medium pacer. I always wanted to be a fast bowler and a fast bowling all-rounder. So this was the difference, when I compare other players with me, this was where I was different from the others and where I succeeded. That I was not willing to accept my limitation. My limitation was that my action did not allow me to bowl fast. So I am probably the only bowler in cricket history who completely changed his bowling action to suit his vision. I was not limited by my bowling action, so that in order to pursue my vision, I was prepared to take the risk of losing everything, because when you change your bowling action, you lose your whatever natural gift you have. But I was prepared to lose that rather than just not become a fast bowler. So it's very important that if you have a vision, you should never ever compromise on that vision. In my opinion, all of us have great potential inside us. We all have, God has given us, all of us, great attributes. The problem is that it's we who limit ourselves. Of course, you have to work hard. When you have a vision and you have a high vision, chances are that most of the time you'll be walking around unsatisfied, because you are aiming so high that what other people consider to be successful, you think you're a failure or you haven't achieved your targets. So of course you have to drag yourself much more. But this is the key. In my 21 years of cricket, I discovered that what happens is failures, setbacks, they never defeat you. It's when in a moment of weakness, you scale down your vision. It's then that you are on that slippery slope where you just become an ordinary individual. So you're never defeated by failures. The thing is that if you have a great vision, if you aim very high, you should never, when you have moments of weakness, like I got dropped after my first test match, I never came back into cricket for the next 3 years. But at no point did I think that I would settle for being an ordinary medium pacer, medium pace bowler. My ambition was always to be a fast bowler. So in those 3 years, I worked at myself. But I never scaled down my vision. If anything, I used to scale up my vision. So when I would get to a certain place where I became the best fast bowler in the Pakistan team, that wasn't enough. Then I wanted to be the best in the world. Then when I thought I'd become the top fast bowler in the world, I wanted to become the best all-rounder in the world. So it always would be scaled up rather than scaled down. I found that people, when they suffer a setback, they just lose that confidence and that self-belief, and then they try to think that, okay, I'll settle for something less. And that's the beginning of where you lose your potential. You cap your potential the moment you accept something less. And that really has been, whatever I've done in life, that really has been the thing that, I have, when I've reached a certain point, rather than being satisfied, then I just go a little bit further up. So when I became the captain, then the vision became to make Pakistan the best team in the world. And bear in mind that at that time, probably the greatest team in cricket history existed, which I have no doubt it was the greatest team, was the West Indians of late 70s and most of 80s. And so, to have an ambition. So what you do is that you keep pushing yourself, and then when I became the captain, the idea was to push the team. But never accept second best. Whatever your vision is, that really is the key. You never compromise on your vision. You compromise for your vision. All your steps are taken to get there, but you never ever compromise on that thing. So that was my philosophy. So when I decided to build the cancer hospital, I already had at that time I was at the peak of my cricketing success, and it was not through any great feeling of charity that I started building the hospital. A personal tragedy in my life, my mother got ill and saw her suffering, so that's why I decided to build the cancer hospital. But it was, not in a memory, the fact that I realized that, if I, with all my resources and, being well placed in society, if I could suffer so much along with my family, what happens to a poor man? So that really was the reason. So when I started exploring building a cancer hospital, whoever I asked said that, look, a cancer hospital in Pakistan cannot be built because it was at that time Nawaz Sharif's government. They had tried for 5 years and had failed to build a cancer hospital. So they said, it's, you don't get oncologists, you don't get the engineers, the machinery is too expensive, running cost, everything, so it can't happen. And it took about 3 years of running around like a headless chicken, even to get the concept straight. I couldn't even, understand the concept of how to go about it. And I remember getting 20 of the top doctors in Lahore, we had formed the board of governors by now. We still have the minutes of the board meeting. Out of the 20 doctors, 19 said that, look, the cancer hospital is impossible to build in Lahore. One of them said it's possible, but it's impossible to treat majority of the patients free. Now here again, I had a board. All the board members felt that maybe, we should just build a general hospital. That because of all the reasons given, which we had in our minutes of the meeting, that it's not possible. But obviously, my motivation was only the cancer hospital because of what I had suffered. And secondly, I had seen what happens to a poor man when he gets cancer, because when my mother was ill, I ended up going to the hospital and saw the plight of poor cancer patients, what was going on. So, there were tough periods, by the way. It's not an easy time, because you should, obviously, when you expect to do something, when you have high vision, you should expect that there are going to be a lot of ups and downs, there's going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of disappointments. But again, I repeat that if in a moment of weakness is when you lose out. That's when, sitting in the board meeting, it's very easy to say, okay, let's just build a general hospital. But it is at that time that, I was, as the chairman of the board, had to provide the leadership. And we said that, look, the reason we are building the hospital is there's no cancer hospital in Pakistan. When finally the hospital opened, we had a CEO, especially we had got him from the United States, because there was no professional chief executive, there was no concept of running a cancer hospital. In the first board meeting, he sat down and told us that, look, if you treat more than 10% of the patients free in this hospital, you will be bankrupt in 6 months' time. Again, the temptation that, okay, let's just start with 10% and then maybe you increase it. But because I collected all the money, pledging the people that, look, this is going to be a hospital, the majority of the patients will be poor, will get free treatment. So again, the temptation that, but anyway, we started, and I'm glad that we defied everything, every expectation. No one thought that this hospital would be built, and then no one thought it would be run. And today, 10 years, last December, we completed, and it was given an award by World Health Organization for services to humanity. The third area I entered was politics. People think I failed in it. I, of course, think that I'm well on my way to success. But let me just briefly, how did I end up in politics? I ended up in politics because of the situation that happened. We had, this was 94, I had run around everywhere to collect money for the hospital. We had won the World Cup, and so the World Cup had given us a great boost. And so, whenever we got stuck, before that we used to have victories on the cricket field. So each time we won, immediately I would go on a fundraising campaign, and people wanted to be with winners. Finally, I only played the last 2 years of my career. I would have left cricket earlier because my passion had gone out of the game. But I actually played for the hospital. In fact, this was discussed in the Board of Governors meeting. Everyone said, look, if you leave cricket, no one is going to give you money, so you've really got to stay in the field. And especially bear in mind that at that time there was so much skepticism. People thought it's not possible to build a cancer hospital. And there were articles, the doctor community all ridiculed the idea. So I played only for the hospital for the last 2.5 years of my career. And we were really stuck. I mean, had we lost the World Cup, the hospital would not have been built, because when we were doing badly, the donations completely stopped. So anyway, when we won the World Cup, we raised money, but that steam ran out in 2 years' time. That too, I exhausted all the good feeling about the euphoria of the World Cup. And people, when they used to see my face, anyone with any money would literally hide. And there was a serious donors fatigue. So to open the hospital in December '94, we had to collect $4 million. Because the bills had to be paid. We needed $4 million. There was staff already, we had everyone in place. The hospital had already been delayed for 6 months. And I had known we ran out of ideas. How do we collect this $4 million? So I just thought of an idea, because whenever I used to go travel everywhere, ordinary people would start coming to hand me 100 rupees, 1,000 rupees. So I thought, look, there's only one thing to do, is to just travel all over Pakistan and try and collect money. So I did a 6-week tour of Pakistan. I started from Peshawar, went all the way to Karachi, Quetta, all 29 cities I covered. Went in an open van, had a big box, collection box behind it. And I would start 7 in the morning collecting, and till midnight I would be collecting money, because it was small donations. We collected more than $4 million, of course, in the 6 weeks, but those 6 weeks changed me completely. They're the ones, those 6 weeks, that the reason I ended up in politics. What happened was that, people like us who come from, school I went to HSC college, we who are sort of the well-to-do classes in Pakistan, the tiny elite, it's the worst thing about colonialism is that it breeds self-loathing. It breeds contempt for your own people, because the elite always wants to emulate the colonialists. And so because the colonialists have a contempt, and you always want to be like them, and you want to be, distance yourself from the masses. And I, of course, came from a school which bred the best brown sides in Pakistan. People, all of us pretending that we were really English public school boys rather than Pakistanis. And so, there was a big distance between me. I had no idea what ordinary Pakistanis were all about. I used to play cricket, meet a few friends. I was, content man with my life. I never wanted to meet anyone else. And so it was the first time I actually went all over and saw this ordinary people for 6 weeks going from one street to the other. But what changed me was the generosity of the common man in Pakistan. There were these incredible scenes, and I wish if a government would have made a film of this, just to give hope to people in our country, that how people are willing to sacrifice, to have the self-denial they have to actually help others. And it was the biggest eye-opener for me. The poor people, tea boys giving me money, a driver would be driving me somewhere, and at the end he would hand me some money. And so it changed me. And it's then that I began to realize that the people are actually very strong in our country. The ordinary, the problem is not with the ordinary people. The problem was with the ruling elite and people like me. Well-off people like me, all I'm worried about is myself, because I'm well-off, so I don't care what happens to anyone else. I build these big walls around my house, I have everything there. It doesn't matter what happens to the ordinary person. So that's where the change started taking place. I began to have respect for the people. There are these people living these incredibly difficult lives, and yet they are giving to a hospital, and people in Peshawar are giving to a hospital in Lahore, in Karachi, all over the country. So that was the time, during this time, I began to feel that, I should try and do something for it. When I came into politics, and the reason I came into politics, and I identified the problem, I thought that the one problem in the country, one thing that would make a change, was the rule of law. The problem in our country was that the ruling elite was above law. They broke all the laws. People came into politics to make money. They used politics to build factories, took away without any concern for what happened to the common man. So the one thing that would check this elite would be the rule of law. So we named our party Movement for Justice. And I was very clear, when people think that, I was some sort of a fool who thought because I was popular in cricket, he would also, go in the streets and he become the Prime Minister. I had no such illusions. I knew what I was up against. I thought about it for almost 2 years. Thought very carefully that do I want to take this plunge? And I knew that it would be a very difficult road ahead. Because you're challenging basically ruling elite, entrenched elite. So when I announced my party, there was tremendous enthusiasm in the country. I went out, first 2 or 3 times I went to public meetings. There were these huge rallies there. A lot of people turned up. And I think at that time, the government, the party, Muslim League, which was, we had one party won, the other case. Everyone knew Muslim League would win the elections. And when they saw these huge rallies and these masses of people turning up, they got scared and offered me 30 seats to join them and become part of, a coalition, a party with Muslim League. And when I refused, a lot of people said that, look, he's an idiot, he's inflexible, he doesn't know anything about politics, he has a big opinion. I actually refused because had I joined them, I actually would have been going against my own vision. My vision was to have rule of law in Pakistan. I asked myself only one question, that if I join them, will I be able to establish the rule of law? Can they afford an independent judicial system? And the moment I knew, well, I knew the answer was no because they could not afford it. So had I joined them, I would have compromised on my vision. And so, you know, it was like the charge of the light brigade. We were completely destroyed in the elections. And everyone thought that, you know, that this is it. You know, he's going to leave politics. It's because people thought that this is it. You know, you only come to politics to get into power. It all depends why you want to come into power. So I have no illusions about why I want to come into power. And then again, when this time General Musharraf, I was asked, was the only party that was invited to join the coalition. We call it the coalition of reform parties. I thought differently, seeing some of the biggest crooks in Pakistan in that coalition. So again, everyone, and he stated, I mean, in August he gave an interview and said that I was his prime ministerial candidate had I joined his coalition. I had never any doubt that there was no, I would not join. There was no, he said that I had a, you know, he gave a statement, he said, but he had a very inflated opinion of himself. How could I have an inflated opinion of myself standing up against the Pakistan military establishment? I mean, you know, if only you had to be a fool to think that you would just sweep the election, you know, standing up with a control election like that. But I again thought that had I joined them, again I only asked myself one question. Can General Musharraf afford an independent judicial system? And clearly, a military general cannot afford an independent judicial system. And neither, of course, could be the powerful Chaudhry of Gujarat. So I had again no problems in saying no to it. And I say this to you because, you know, that's why I think that I have no doubt. People think that, you know, I've lost or I'm, you know, I'm floundering. I think I'm on exactly the course which I think I'm headed for. I have no doubt about it because I'm true to my vision. I have not compromised on my vision. That's why I think I'm winning. By the way, I have never had any doubts that I will not win. I mean, I know some of you, I can see the faces that you have, but I have no doubts. And then finally, I mean, he announced Chancellor of Bradford University. You see, I was in my constituency in Myanmar, there is huge unemployment. Unemployed youth roaming around, a lot of crime as a result. So I thought I'd build a technical college there and, you know, train them, teach them technical stuff so that they would be employable. People donated me 40 acres of land, beautiful piece of land. And while I was doing this, I suddenly got this offer of being Chancellor of Bradford University. So now I'm coming back to my vision. So from the vision of being a technical college, the moment I got this offer, now immediately I started imagining this great university there. So I got Bradford to that I would accept it on one condition, that they would help me build a university in Imran. Of course, they agreed. And now it's a question of me controlling my ambition. I don't want to get too carried away by it because I'm already picturing, when I stood there last when this college is being built, I'm already picturing this huge university coming out with textile. Because Bradford's speciality is in textiles and IT, which both are badly needed in Pakistan. But, you know, just sort of capping up the vision. In my opinion, it is, you know, you are what your vision is. You are how big you think. And you only lose when you compromise on that. The second thing, which is very important in leadership, you should never be scared of failure. The reason why a lot of people do not attain their potential in life is because they're petrified of failure. One of the worst things is, in my opinion, one of the worst prisons is where you worry about what will people say. People will laugh at me. People have always laughed at me. When I was in, I played my first test match, as I told you, I wasn't very good. And I bowled first spell where I hardly troubled the batsman because the ball was going in the stumps. So when I came for my second spell, the umpire turned around and said, normally he announces, he said, right arm over the wicket. So he announced me, he said, right arm over the wicket, anywhere. And I was used to it, because in the team also, players would say, okay, the difficult position, there's a position called for the ladies called silly but on. It's called silly because it's so close to the bat that if the batsman hits you, have no time to wait and get hit. So only fools stand there. And so they would say, there's a big match coming up, make Imran stand there. Because, he's dispensable. So anyway, but all my life, when at the hospital, I remember attending speaking to doctors in London, and really they made such a joke of me when they were asking me technical questions. I had no idea how cancer hospital was going to be built. And they kept asking me, so how will you do this and how will you do that? I didn't know how I would do that. So, they had a good laugh. And politics, of course, when I lost the first elections, I didn't read the newspapers, but apparently they really had a good laugh at me. But never be scared of that. Never ever be scared of failure. Hate failure, but don't be scared of that. Because, failure is the best teacher. The trick about failure is that, when you fail, you have to do soul searching. You have to look deep inside you. Your mistakes stand out. But the trick is that, when you fail, times people get very overcritical. And they get so critical that they lose confidence. They lose self-belief. If you do not get demoralized by failure can teach you far more than ever the confidence you get from winning. I think that I was, the reason I succeeded compared to other players too was because I was better at self-analysis. I thought I analyzed myself much better. When I failed, I did a better critique of myself than anyone else. When certain players lost, I found that they would start thinking, am I losing my eyesight? Is something gone wrong? People, is my grip wrong? So I'm just sort of saying technical things in cricket, for instance. So people just lose perspective. When you fail, at times, because everyone is critical of you and people are, you feel humiliated, you at times go for overkill and you get demoralized. For me, failure eventually became, in the beginning, it's always tough in the beginning, but if you keep facing, you face failure. You don't try and run away from it. You face it and try and work it out. Your mistakes come out, you practice them, if it's in cricket. If politically you lose, you must sit down and do a proper analysis. The danger is that other people, when they criticize you, you get influenced by that. Because other people, might have their own agendas. So, for instance, when we lost the election, all sorts of things came up. And our own party members, I used to watch our central executive sitting there, they were running themselves down that, we did this. But they lost perspective. When you lose perspective, failure can damage you. But if you can analyze your failure properly, it is the way of moving forward. And I found that, it's because of not being scared of failure. In fact, I wouldn't think of failure. No matter what happened, when I used to step on the cricket ground, I only used to think of winning. I never used to think about, what if I lost? Remember that this is, it's a totally different strategy if you're thinking of winning and if you're thinking of not losing. They're two different strategies. One is a negative, aggressive, positive strategy. The other is a defensive one. When I sit down and watch teams, I hardly watch any cricket, but when I watch them, you can actually tell very quickly which is an attacking team, which is on the offense. Who is thinking of winning? If you watch the current Australians, you can just tell that all they are focused on is winning. And overall, the other teams who go on the defensive, even before the match starts, they are on the defensive. The team selection is completely different if you are attacking and if you are defending. The composition of the team will be different. It's the same, in politics. If you go in elections, And because you're worried that what if I do badly, you already start compromising. You already sort of start thinking, okay, I should settle for this. So it is very important that your focus should be on winning. It doesn't mean that you go mad, but when you focus on winning with your existing resources, your assessments will be much better. Whatever your existing resources at that point in time are, you will use them better for maximum benefit. But if you enter anything, competition, math, anything, if you enter with the fear of losing, the problem is that it is a self-fulfilling prophecy in the end. You just go negative. And I'll just give you one instance that, it was just that when I never used to think like that. I never used to think about losing. For instance, in the '92 World Cup, we were languishing second from the bottom halfway through. And we were 50-1 to win the World Cup. And my manager in the Khawar came to me and said, listen, we'd better start thinking of getting back. So what do you mean? He said, now that we're not going to qualify for the semi-finals, what's the route you want to go back by Singapore or Bangkok? So I said, look, only tell me once we've lost. Don't even talk to me about that. Because you shouldn't even entertain the thought of losing. Because your whole strategy, and I'll just give you one instance what happened. I never used to, I would enter, I would with anxiety and fear and everything. But I never used to, I always used to think I would. Once we were playing in Sharjah, and there was this India-Pakistan match. Now, India-Pakistan match, for those few people who don't know, it ceases to become cricket, right? And in my time, it was much worse. Now, thank God, with a good relationship with India and Pakistan, we can accept losing. But in my time, losing was not an option. So, anyway, I was quite confident that we would win as usual, having convinced myself that there's no way we would lose. The evening before, I was just sitting there at some dinner, and this lady who knew nothing about cricket, she said, look, Imran, I hate to tell you that you're going to lose tomorrow. So I said, why do you say that? He said, I don't know anything about cricket, but I always have a premonition before a match. She said, and last time everyone thought you would lose, but I had a premonition you'd win. But this time I have a premonition that you're going to lose. So I said, no, don't worry, don't be silly. I went to the match, all confident about winning. But as the match started, things didn't start going as they should have. The Indian batsmen just seemed to have had more luck than normal. So they kept... So as the match progressed, things just didn't go our way. And then suddenly this woman's voice started ringing in my ears. And I couldn't get it out of my mind, because whenever something went wrong, I thought, oh no, she said that. So eventually, they got a huge score, and that was the famous match where Jalal hit that very six. But eventually we won the match. But that was a big lesson to me, because here I was fighting this rather than concentrating on the match. All the time I was fighting this that we were destined to lose, And my success as a captain, and those of you, I'm not going to go into too much cricket, but in the 80s we actually did not have very good teams. If you compare the teams in the 70s, those of you understand, the teams in the 70s were far superior to the team in the 80s. But we were playing against the West Indies. Now again, I repeat, West Indies, in my opinion, was the greatest team in cricket history. They were touring in Pakistan in 1986. And I used to look at the players, and you could just see that the thought of West Indies, they were just petrified. It was not, the team, the West Indies of the 80s, it was not a question of losing. It was a question of losing with dignity. They didn't just destroy teams, they demolished teams. Teams used to be demoralized for years after. There was a bowler, a really great cricketer from New Zealand called Richard Hadley. And I remember he came back from a tour of West Indies, and I looked at him and I said, what's the matter with you? I'm still shell-shocked. This is a year later, you know. So when they came to Pakistan, now I announced that we would play the West Indies with neutral umpires. Now those of you who don't know, before neutral umpires came, umpires played a very big part in winning. You know, you weren't, the home umpires always used to get patriotic at crucial situations. So, to announce, when it wasn't accepted about neutral umpires, I mean, no one in the, I was the one who was obviously leading this thing about neutral umpires, and it wasn't accepted by anyone in world cricket at the time, especially opposed by the two big cricketing countries, Australia and England. So when I announced about neutral umpires, the team went into a shock because they thought that at least there was one home advantage. Look what he's doing. But you know, there was a, I felt, and I announced, I said, look, when we beat them, we don't want them to blame the umpire. Now the reason why I say this is very simple. One, that the moment you do that, you remove the crutches from the players. You see, I have always believed that we have great potential inside us. We hardly ever live to our potential. The potential comes out when you put yourself against a challenge. The bigger the challenge, the bigger you become. And so when there was this West Indies team and we were going to play with neutral umpires, that team played way beyond its potential. If you ever, today if you look back at cricket and look at the two teams, just compare the two teams, it's like a professionals playing against schoolboys. There was no comparison. But that team created history. There were shocks in world cricket, you know, because we beat them. And we ended up drawing the series, which by the way at that time was the greatest achievement. But the reason was that the players rose above themselves. You know, they discovered that they could fight, that they didn't need any crutches. And that's why that team did well. And that team, that confidence built on itself. And you know, so playing against the West Indies in Pakistan with neutral umpires, you know, if you were scared of failure, you would not do that. And so, you know, as I say, I mean, I did not think, I mean, there were far more talented cricketers than me, but this ability, you know, to be able to take challenges and not think of failure. You know, 92 World Cup, I was, you know, again, we were at this time, the worst stage is 50-1. My sister calls me up from Pakistan. She says, look, I just want to tell you that all fundraising has stopped. And if you lose the match, don't bother coming to Pakistan. You know, but it's to insulate yourself from such opinions. Remember, there will always be people trying to tell you that it cannot be done. You will go through your life, like I've always gone through my life, people saying this cannot be done. It can be done, provided, you know, you're willing. Number 3 is self-belief. It is connected to this whole thing, but remember, self-belief, whether a team gets it, it always is infused by a leader. But once a team gets it, you know, because I have, you know, 21 years I played international cricket where I competed all the time. So you understood the value of self-belief, and it's the same whether it is in a hospital, in a factory, wherever you go. That self-belief is critical. You believe in yourself, you can do it. It changes you. I'll give you an example now, again, critical example, but 99 World Cup. Everyone, all the cricket experts in England thought that Pakistan was the best team. Australia was not considered the best team. The pool of talent that Pakistan had and Australia had, Pakistan on paper was superior. And Pakistan looked superior throughout until the final of the World Cup and Pakistan lost. And from then onwards, you look at the graph of that Australian team and look at the graph of Pakistan team. Pakistan went down, Australia went up. Same talent pool, which all the experts recognized was better than the Australians. What went wrong? Pakistan lost self-belief. Australia from that win gained self-belief. And when you have self-belief, it feeds on itself. You know, each victory gives greater belief. And when you have that belief, you just automatically, this thing about losing, you just don't think about losing. You just go in a match thinking you win. It is the most critical thing in any organization. You must believe. In a country, Little Britain, small island, what happened? That self-belief came that we can do it. If you see the rise of the Islamic civilization, all a few scattered Arabs, no one even bothered, Persian Empire one side and Roman Empire on the other side. What happened? That self-belief came that we can do it. And it is, believe me, it is, you know, when, for instance, I'll give you an example. I was on a TV show, and how you destroy that self-belief, I'm saying. I was on a TV show, a TV current affair program with a great minister we have. Abbas is sitting here. I don't want to too much of this minister, but he's an information minister called Sheikh Rashid. I was sitting there and I was asking him, I said, look, you are handing over these people to the United States without giving them the right to prove their innocence. I said, can't you just ask, can't you just tell the United States that, look, please give us citizens exactly the same rights that you've given your own citizens? I said, at least you can say that. So this is on television, Minister of Information representing the government. He says, Imran, what are you talking about? They'll make Torah Bora out of us. To ask for our rights, they'll make Torah Bora. So imagine when your leadership is talking like that, what hope is there of a country ever getting up? What do people, how do people believe in themselves? What are they there for? I mean, your own minister, and you, anyway, I won't go, you know, and lastly, the only way people follow you is if you have, if you command respect and if you have credibility. You know, this is the only way people will fight for you, people will believe you, they must trust you. Two things very important. Command, and they're linked to each other. Credibility, which comes from commanding respect. They will only, you will only command respect if you have credibility. And the four components of that are very important. Number one is integrity and honesty. People must believe that you are honest and you have integrity. Number two, you must be fair. People will forgive you for your mistakes, but they will not forgive you if they think you are unfair, you are unjust. When I became the captain, the first thing, the first move, and the most unfortunate thing was that my cousin, he was like my older brother, he was like my mentor, my childhood hero, my first cousin. I had to drop him from the team because I didn't think he was good enough and there was someone that's better than him. My relationship with him was destroyed that day. But the team, I never, throughout my 10 years, never did I have a problem with discipline. Never did the team think that I made mistakes. There were players who I thought were good enough and I backed them, didn't turn out to be. But never did the team think that I was doing it for any selfish reasons, for my own reasons. Your ego should never get in the way of your vision. It should never be that you should bring your own personal likes and dislikes in either your team selection or in what your main objective is. Just one thing about, you recently heard about Shoaib Akhtar being left out of the Pakistan team. I disagree with this. Because if I was the captain, having done well in a series, I would now have thought, if I had, you know, get an instinct, I would be thinking of making the team even stronger. To keep out a player because he's hard to handle or he has, you know, all the girls would sort of look at him or whatever reasons, you know, and it's a bit, it's compromising on your vision in the end. If your vision is for Pakistan team to the best team, then whatever the team, the best team is, should be playing. It shouldn't, you should never have any, that, you know, so-and-so has personal loyalty to me or he'll, you know, this should never come in the way. This is, in my opinion, one of the biggest impediments in good leadership. The ego comes in the way. You know, you want personal loyalty or something and you forget your main objective. Then who's going to take you there? And then, you know, there was a player, Sarfraz Nawaz, who would make Shoaib Akhtar look like a good Samaritan. But you know, if he was good enough, I would make him play. It doesn't matter whether I like. There's a member of our central executive in my political party. He's irritating. He gives me hell. He makes life. He criticizes me all. When I think is unfair. But I can't even think that I would ever leave him out because he is a very valuable member of my team. So the leader should get along with him. It's the art of leadership is not to exclude. It's to make sure that you get on with all the characters to achieve your minimum objective. So finally, I think my time is up. We politicians always talk too long. Just to recap, the people sitting here, some of you are what I consider to be the cream of Pakistan. You are probably the most educated community that the country has produced. I think that it's very important that you should realize that whatever you do, knowledge, money, everything should be for a higher purpose. It should not be for having more and more comforts. Life can be very easy. For me, it couldn't be any easier. I have everything in life. There's more than whatever I have, or whatever I aspired for. I have much more than that. But I think that we must all realize, especially you people sitting here, that there is a responsibility. Don't take the easy route. That famous saying of Robert Frost that I took the path less trodden on, that's what makes the difference. Don't take the trodden path. It's easy, to sit here. You're all qualified. You can make a lot of money and live, you think, happily ever after. But happily ever after never comes from comforts. Happily ever after will come when you use what God has given you for the benefit of others. And your country probably needs you now more than ever before. It's just not in things like you can get, your grades are there. You have people, some of you have made money, so you can use that money. But remember, never is a society changed through social work or any other way except through politics. Whenever a change takes place, it's always political. And I finished my speech by quoting Aristotle, who said almost 2,500 years ago, that when there is injustice in a society, then every citizen will get into politics, except two types. One, the materialist and selfish, who only think of themselves. And secondly, people who are timid, who are scared to take on the vested interest, like in Pakistan, like in Chaudhry's, for instance. Thank you.